This episode of Now This Is Lit is brought to you by Audible. Check the link in the description to get your first Star Wars audiobook free. Everyone loves free things. Click that link. Do it. This show is also brought to you by our patrons. If you want to support the show in a different way, with just $1 a month, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/Star Wars Lit Pod. You can get a sticker. You can get access to an exclusive show that we do every month that's wild and chaotic and fun and something you can only get by becoming a member of the Patreon. There'll be so many more perks very, very soon. But for now, do you want a sticker? Do you want a sticker that has a Now This Is Lit logo? Because it's fantastic and I love them. But I also want to give them away because there's just a stack of stickers on my desk. So if you want one, $1 a month. Patreon.com/Star Wars Lit Pod. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. You're listening to Now This Is Lit, a podcast about Star Wars books, the people who make them, and the readers who just can't get enough of them. I'm your host, Meg Dowell. I use she, her pronouns. Today, I am talking with author Steve Ellerhoff, who wrote a recent academic-style book that came out that is about Star Wars called Jung and Star Wars. We're going to talk all about that and how literary criticism and psychology can come together and form a very interesting conversation about Star Wars and what it means to all of us. I hope this conversation delights you as much as it delighted me. Enjoy. Thank you for listening to the show. It's very cool.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for doing it. The angle is obviously right up my alley, so.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why I started the show in the first place, because what I wanted in a Star Wars books podcast, I could not find, which was just people sitting down and talking about Star Wars books, and it's kind of like chill. And I'd worked on some podcasts that were the similar topics, but like very like stressful, like very like tight and like, okay, we got to do it exactly like this. And I'm like, I just want to hang out with people and talk about books. So that's what we do here.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And you're doing it. It's working.
Damn. It is working. It is working much better than I anticipated. And that's all I'll say about that for now. All right, so you are here. You have written a book about Star Wars, which is very special to me because technically the second interview, very early interview on the show, was another academic book that was about Star Wars, connecting it to real world things. So this kind of like connection between like Star Wars being this fictional fantasy science fiction world and connecting it to us as people and humans and how we live and all of the important things that we can take from Star Wars and apply to ourselves and the other way around. I love that topic. And so when I heard that this book was coming out, I was like, first of all, I need to read that. Second of all, I would love to talk to the person responsible. And I will also say thank you for including your email address. Easily findable on your website.
Sure thing. Yeah.
I understand why many people do not do that. But it is always appreciated. It's very easy to find you and be like, hey, I think your book idea is really cool. Do you want to talk to me about it? And you said yes. And that's
thank
great.
you. Yeah. And thank you for reaching out. And yeah, I put that email address up there hoping, to hear from somebody out there. And you never know, when you write a book, and especially a book that is published by an academic press, you expect that it hopefully will find its way into some college libraries, and maybe you'll hear from some other people in the field. But also, I mean, I want to hear from people who, in this instance, love Star Wars, love Jungian psychology, or are just curious about either or both. Yeah. So to hear from you was really great. I really was excited when I got your email.
Good. Oh, that's so fun to hear because I love sending emails. Even though because, a lot of the work I do is like you're sending a lot of emails. I would say like probably 80% of them I never get a response from, which is just that's how it goes. That's just part of how it is. So it's always fun to have someone be like, "Yes, I'd love to talk to you." It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so before we talk about the book itself and a few of the things surrounding that, why don't you introduce yourself to anyone who might be listening and tell me also about your Star Wars journey, kind of how you discovered it, got into it, and how it has clearly remained such an important part of your life and who you are as a person.
All right. Yeah. I'm Steve Ellerhoff. I've I'm a bookseller by trade. I am a worker owner at a little indie bookstore in Eugene, Oregon called Tsunami Books. But I also have a PhD in literary analysis from Trinity College Dublin in Ireland. And I still very much have the need to scratch that itch of
Mhm.
doing literary analysis and doing deep dives into books and literature. And I would include, films, any kind of storytelling art I'm interested in. And in this instance, my focus really is Carl Jung and the psychology that he put together, as well as his sort of therapeutic descendants, the people who are still practicing Jungian psychology, and their deep, deep investment in mythology and what mythology means to us in our lives, how important it is, how crucial it is in our lives, and then applying those ideas to Star Wars, which may be my first great love. Um, the first time I can think of that I knew about Star Wars was I had just turned 3, and Return of the Jedi had just come out in the theaters, and my dad took me to it, and so that cemented everything for me. I mean, I had a peak experience there, and and the experience of seeing Jabba the Hutt and Bib Fortuna and the Ewoks and the droids and everything else was so formative from such a very young age that it has just carried through the rest of my life, and I'm 45 now. So yeah, between ages 3 and 45, there's a strong Star Wars thread that has just gone through everything.
Yeah, my dad also, like yours, went to see Star Wars when it first came out. And so like, um, I didn't get to experience the original trilogy as it was coming out, but Star Wars also for me has been like it's just always kind of been there. It's from my earliest memories, it's he was watching the movies over and over again, or we had some kind of toys, or it was just playing in the background, or there was some kind of, it's so embedded in pop culture and just culture in general anyway, that like even if he hadn't already been a fan, I think I would have found it somehow.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's fascinating to me to hear different stories about how fans come to discover Star Wars and kind of like their earliest memories and what it means to them and how it continues to shape them now, because it seems, on the surface you can say, oh, it's just a bunch of movies, or it's just it's just pretend, which it is. And we all know that, but as you kind of demonstrate in your writing, it's you can take so much from Star Wars and think so much more deeply about the messages it's sending, what it means, what we can gather from that, what we can take away from it. And I think that's like one of my favorite things. And that's the other thing that drew me to this book is I love when, even knowing that Star Wars is fictional, so many of us will still dive so deep into extracting all of these different ideas from it as if it's real. Um, but in such a like
Yeah.
in such a fun, insightful way. I love doing that. It annoys some people, but like that's why we're here, is to take something that we love and just talk about it in meaningful ways, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It has to do with, integral parts of living life itself. And it deals with those in symbolic ways. And like you said, we have this family connection to it. We've lived in a time where we can take these stories in the comfort of our own homes and and as families and or not. And then at the same time, you've got this sort of level of the mainstream blockbuster appeal of the films that set off the whole phenomenon. Um, and those ticket sales and getting butts in seats at the movie theater and just like the sheer number of people around the world who have gone to see it on the big screen, and that is a big event for them. Um, and all of that. You've got this collective experience of Star Wars, but you've also got this family experience of Star Wars, but you've also got this personal experience of Star Wars, and it speaks on all of those levels.
Mm.
And since it resonates so much, it's worth doing the deep dive if you're interested in that.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to do with Jung and Star Wars was really qualify how it constitutes a mythology in our own time.
Mm.
Star Wars passes that sniff test immediately. Anybody, even people who don't watch the films, don't really read, are maybe aware there are books, but have never picked one up or looked at it. They might just know who Darth Vader is or Yoda by sight.
Mm.
But even they would say, yeah, that I could see how that's a mythology, but that's not satisfactory for me. I wanted to
Mm.
qualify it and say, well, let's unpack it. Let's
Yeah.
actually amplify it, to use a Jungian term, and let's open that box up and see how it's a mythology. And hopefully, that's what this book is doing.
Oh, it definitely is. Um, Speaking of the book, why don't you tell me, you talked a little bit about your work. How did you come to um start working on this project? Because you mentioned was it in the epilogue? I don't remember. You'd been working on it for a while. So what was kind of the process of like getting you to that point where you're like, both I would like to work on something like this, and oh, someone is going to actually let me do that and maybe publish it.
Yeah, yeah, that's no. Thanks for asking that, because it was a long slog. The writing itself took 10 years,
Mhm.
and I'm busy doing other stuff. I'm paying bills and working and all the rest of it. Um, but also thank you for reading the book and spending time with it. That really means a lot to me, especially you, given your great focus on Star Wars books and the literary side of Star Wars. I really appreciate your eyes and ears and heart in looking at this book. Um, I think in some ways it began uh there's some fuzzy borders to when this book started. So I just had one of my former professors buy the book, which was a great honor because
Oh.
he was my classical mythology professor in the year 1999, I think. Um, I think it was spring term 1999, and in his classical mythology class, I wrote a paper that was about Star Wars and classical mythology. And I think I got a C on it or something like that.
No.
And I was he was coming. He just what he was like. I'm just like I remember his notes on the paper. It's like I'm not really convinced by your argument, and it was and I was my feathers were ruffled,
Mhm.
by that. And so I sort of traced that to the origin point of the book. But then uh but then, time passed and was doing my PhD, and my focus there was short stories by Kurt Vonnegut and Ray Bradbury. And uh and also I was applying a Jungian lens to their writings and talking about how their short stories behave like little myths for 1950s and 60s America. And so somewhere in working on that for my PhD, um, Star Wars was always there in the background. And I was thinking about, what next? Like where could I cast my attention after this? And it sort of was always just inevitably going to be Star Wars because of my lifelong love of it. And so what happened was after I finished writing my PhD, and then it got published as a book as well by this same press, Routledge. Uh, I sort of needed to clear the gasket, and just do something new. And I wrote an essay on Luke Skywalker and this Jungian idea of the transcendent function, and sent that out to there is a Jungian journal out of San Francisco called Jung Journal, Culture and Psyche. And they picked that up. That was in the run up to the release of The Force Awakens. So a big question in everybody's mind was, where is Luke Skywalker 30 years later? What's he doing? And so that was the impetus to write that. And writing it was very pleasurable and satisfying. And so then for the next, yeah, like, I don't know, 10 years, I guess, I just kept plugging away and building chapters. And I didn't go looking for a publisher until after I had a manuscript. Sometimes with academic writing, people will write 2 or 3 chapters and then shop it around to different academic presses. And then if one takes a bite, then they have to go finish the book. But I didn't want to do that. I did not want to work on somebody else's timeline because I wanted to give this the time it needed to be what it needed to be. And so I just stuck with it, and it ended up being much longer. The manuscript was much, much longer than the book that has been published. I had to cut out like 200 pages.
No.
But that was good. That made it a better book.
Yeah.
And also there's all these bits, these like cutting room floor bits that I don't know what I'm gonna do with, but they'll find some kind of place somewhere.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of the process of how it happened.
I kind of love that because like I work on deadlines all the time. Um, and after a while you kind of get used to it, but like it is nice sometimes to have a writing project that you're kind of actually enjoying, that you can work on your own schedule and you can work on it if you really are um kind of like in the zone, and if you need a break, you can like take a break. That's nice every once in a while.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, life is so full of deadlines.
Yeah.
Um just as it is. And so I really knew I had a sense too that I needed to grow in certain ways before I was really gonna be able to say what I thought needed to be said about some of these characters and themes and situations. So I had some growing to do across those 10 years in order to get it to where I felt like it was worth sharing. If I'd rushed it, in 2 years or something like that, it would not be something that I felt really solid about.
Oh yeah, it's the books that we write are so much of ourselves. Um, and throughout doing that, if you feel like you need to go off and experience something or learn something or take more time with sitting with something, that's just as important as like trying to write something as quickly as possible, because there's so much pressure and we put a lot of that pressure on ourselves to get something done as quickly as we can so we can move forward and accomplish whatever goal we want to. And sometimes it's like you know, it's a little bit cliche, but like the journey is sometimes so much more important, oftentimes than the destination. It's like if you don't take the time to value how you are getting to where you're going, then who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, and I don't think I would have I don't think I would have been able to catch lightning in a bottle if I tried to rush it. That said, I just read the new, well, I don't know how new it is. I think it came out in France a while ago, but the Lucas Wars graphic novel
Oh
about
yeah,
George Lucas. Yeah.
yes.
So I just read that, and one of the things they talk about in there is how John Williams basically scored that first movie in about 6 weeks. And I'm like, what? I'm like, oh, what? That was just, it brought tears to my eyes. I was like, like that, and the score to that movie is just so astoundingly good,
It is.
and timeless, and it'll always be good. And that's
Yeah.
like 6 weeks of work for that guy. Um, just amazing, you know. This project was definitely, my book was definitely not that, and I'm not capable of that, so
Oh.
I live in awe of anybody who is.
Oh, thank you for reminding me about that graphic novel because I've been meaning to um check that out. Thank you
Oh
for that.
yeah, I read it in one sitting.
Oh, it's
It was one evening after work. I was just like, I'm gonna take a break to eat dinner, and that's it. And
yes.
it was just, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful graphic novel.
Oh, I can't wait. There's so many like, because a lot of times on this show I'll end up talking about like, your more traditional like Star Wars novels, or a comic or something that's like fictional, and we love that. That's like, the primary like Star Wars literature that a lot of us are going to be reading. But I love the occasional, not just a reference book, but the occasional like I call it Star Wars adjacent. It's about Star Wars, but maybe it's somewhat something of behind the scenes, or it's in the case of your books, a way to connect Star Wars back to who we are as people. I think you need a mix of that. I think that's like the beautiful thing about Star Wars having been around for so long, and there's so much of it, is like anyone can take an idea and it becomes this whole other thing that maybe like there are some ideas you never thought about before, and it much like the expanded universe. It all just keeps expanding, and like every like 2 seconds I get on social media and I'm like, oh, there's another book that I have to track someone down for, which is not the worst thing, but they're everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. In Jungian terms, this is dreaming the myth onward.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, it's just, and that's exciting. It's wonderful. It's growing ever, and this is an interesting point we're at right now as well. This juncture. Just yesterday, we had Andor win an Emmy for writing.
Mm,
I think it won 5 Emmys or something for the series
mhm.
as a total. But we don't exactly know where Star Wars is officially headed right
Yeah.
now. The
Hmm.
High Republic just kind of closed down. And then, there's going to be a new movie, sometime with Rey. Is that going to be episode 10 or is it not? Is it going to be a standalone or something else? There are
Right.
big question marks going on around people's heads right now with Star Wars, and at the same time it does keep growing. The
Mm.
the engagement goes off in all of these interesting directions because it still speaks to people, and I
Yeah.
think it will keep speaking to us.
Oh, for sure. And like that's one of so many things I've appreciated about the books and related things, especially for the past few years, where it has become like a little bit more uncertain of like, oh, in terms of the screen, like we don't really know what we're getting when and what it's going to look like. And for me, it's like I am so confident that the books are just going to continue to be there. And that's like a form of like stability that like it honestly keeps me going sometimes, because I'm like, you know what? No matter what happens to Star Wars, there's a book coming out next month or the month after that. And that is so comforting to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes so much sense, and it is part of just what makes it so exciting is just how big it is. You
Yeah.
can fill shelves. We see photos on social media all the time of people's Star Wars libraries.
Mhm.
and how they just fill shelves, and these shelves are growing. And it's that interesting schism between EU legends and canon books, and you've got all kinds of engagement around that, and it affecting how people read these things in different ways. If you want to, you can go back and read the Jedi Prince series from
Mhm.
1992, that is really cheesy and weird and pretty ridiculous at times. um, but I mean, you can. It's on the
Yeah.
if you can go find that and read it. It's great. There are so many options. I don't know. I know there are some people who are capable of keeping up with all of it. But I do believe there are very few of them,
Yeah.
who've read it all, right? Because
Yeah.
it's a whole literature has built up. It's not just a series, it's a plethora of series that go
Yeah.
on and on. So the choices are vast and many for those of us who want to read Star Wars. And that's another thing that I like about your show a lot, is that you get that angle, and that's where you bring people in.
Mhm.
It's an incredibly intimate form of engagement reading.
Yeah.
It's something we typically do alone, but we don't have to do alone.
Right.
And the way it sparks theater of the mind, I mean, we're staring at pages, if unless it's a comic book, we're staring at pages of just text that we have figured out how to help us hallucinate in our minds what is happening. That is an incredibly uh, potent form of art that uh, encourages individual engagement. And it just means that we have people who do that, especially with Star Wars. The individual uh, meaning of Star Wars from reader to reader is going to be different. And then that's where they get to talk to each other. And that's where the discussions get really interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm an English literature nerd, so I'm preaching, from this pulpit, but, and to the choir, I think, as well. But
Mhm.
all the same, it's different than the screen engagement. It's unique. It's got its own life to it, and it fills shelves. Your options go on and on.
Does. It does. And as a treat, at the end of this episode or this when we're done talking, just for you, I'll show you my bookshelves.
Oh yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yes, awesome.
It's just for you and no one else. They can go on Instagram if they want to, but
That's
uh
great.
no, I love, it's so fun to have all kinds of authors on. I love talking to anyone, but it's really fun when I get someone on to talk about a book and we end up just talking about all the Star Wars things. Doesn't matter what it is. Um, and like it's so fun as fans because like anyone writing about Star Wars or within the Star Wars universe is a fan. Like you really can't spend that much time this submerged in Star Wars if you're not, right? And so it's
Yeah.
easy for people to forget that like, I'm sitting down with someone for an interview, but like also I'm just here to talk to someone about Star Wars, which goes back to the whole premise of the show, which is just that's all we're here to do. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Me too.
yeah, exactly. I really want to know because in the book, there are different chapters, and each chapter is a different focus, either on a character or a theme or something that has happened. And I would like to know how you went about ultimately choosing what you wanted to focus on in each of these chapters, because you cover Han, Leia, Luke, Vader, and other things as well. And there's so much in Star Wars that you could have chosen to align with everything that you're discussing. How do you go about saying, "Oh, this is what I want this focus to be on"?
Yeah. That was definitely a process. So
Yeah.
thank you for asking about it. Because I one of the first things I have found when I've sat down to earnestly start writing a book, and it's pretty early on, is that I can't do everything. Dang it, I can't do it
Yeah.
all. There's no there's no way I can do everything I want to do in this book. And so one of the things that really shaped the book, I would say, is my own reading and study of Jung and the Jungians and the books that they've written. Because while I geek out on Star Wars, I also, uh, as an adult, have geeked out on Jungian uh, books and his writings, but also the writings of other Jungians. So that reading introduced me to so many ideas, and I got so into it. I've got my shelves of Jungian texts as well as my shelves of Star Wars texts. And part of part of it was, as I would read, I couldn't help thinking about Star Wars while I was reading about Jung and these ideas. And so I kept track of these things and where these intersections would occur to me, and took down notes as far as that went. And at some point, um, I knew, well, actually, I just remembered there was a professor named Robert Evans who edited, he's edited a ton of books of essays that are academic essays on different topics. And so he gets a topic, and then he he kind of commissions other academics to write chapters in the book. So he had like one on Jack Kerouac's On the Road. He had one on psychological readings of literature, and so uh, yeah, some of them focus on certain authors, some of them focus on certain themes. And he contacted me after I wrote my Vonnegut and Bradbury book and said, "Hey, would you like to contribute something to this book on psychological interpretations of literature? It could be something popular if you like." And I tossed some ideas out. And then at sort of at the bottom of the email, I was all like, also, I'm kind of interested in Star Wars, I guess, a little bit, kind of a lot. And I would be interested in doing a psychological interpretation of Darth Vader, but I understand if that's not up your alley. And he wrote back and said, "Do the Darth Vader one." So I was like, okay, okay, okay. So I had that Luke Skywalker one. I wrote a Darth Vader one, and then he commissioned a few other chapters from me in the early years that leaned into Star Wars. And so I had this little cluster of chapters that I later went on and revised a lot, but that helped shape the book, was sort of that experience, and wanting to take that material and then revise it, make it better, make it fit into a larger, longer work. And then yeah, and then that marriage of certain Jungian concepts. So there's, one of the concepts that comes up in there is the archetype, the psychological archetype of the senex, who is that's just Latin word for old man, but it's a mythological figure that Jungians recognize as existing in the unconscious, and that comes out in mythologies all over the world. And I started, as I read around that topic, I started recognizing that, oh, we do have sort of two figures in at least the Skywalker saga of who kind of fulfill this old man figure archetype, and that's Yoda and Emperor Palpatine. And it's just that they're polarized. That's another thing that Jung and the Jungians talk a lot about, different poles of one archetype. And so that became two chapters that kind of work together. I could talk about Yoda, and I could also talk about Palpatine and how their representation of this psychological archetype plays out in the saga. So yeah, that was kind of how it grew. And so I was limited in terms of how many characters I could kind of fit into the book. I wanted to be as comprehensive as I could, but good luck with that. I did try to bring in books here and there from the EU,
Mhm.
especially, because that's another thing. From a Jungian perspective, myth is a thing that you can't really fence in. If you try to fence it in, it's going to hop the fence. It's going to jump right over it.
Mm.
And so, from that perspective, all of the Star Wars stuff is still Star Wars. Lego Star Wars is Star Wars, and
Mhm.
the canonical films, that's Star Wars, obviously, of course. But the comic strips of Vader and Princess Leia, that are humorous, that's Star Wars. There's so much. The toys are Star Wars, all of it. The bubble bath bottle shaped like Princess Leia, that's Star Wars. Um, so from that perspective, I was trying to draw from as many of these threads as possible to work into this book, but ultimately I was limited on who I could talk about, how many characters I could really dive into, and I wanted also, since there isn't a book like this really, I wanted to treat it as if I was working from, okay, where can we start, and
Mhm.
and then get these characters covered, and then I can go on and write another book and look at other characters, or other people can take it up and do their own thing with
Mhm.
and build on it. Hopefully, there's some discussion and discourse around this, and yeah, that was kind of the hope there. And also, so there it was the limits. I quickly
Yeah.
encountered my limits. This is all I can do.
Oh yeah, I understand that. I'm also a what do you mean I can't do all the things I want to do type of person. Every editor I've ever worked with is like, "Can you write less?" And I'm like, "I can. I can. That doesn't mean I want to."
Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's just, I've
Yeah.
been both a writer and an editor, and I understand the need for less, but also why.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and like I said, it was a much longer book, and revision did cut it down. But I think revision served it well. It feels like it did. Um, Other people haven't seen what it was really, but so so I'm kind of going on my own sense of it, but I hope it's better anyway.
I think later drafts of anything we work on is probably, in a lot of ways, improved upon the original, as hard as it may be.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it was funny to get into that point. Rutledge was like, "Well, we'll look at it if it's 110,000 words tops." And I was like, it was 180,000 words
No.
or 190. It may have been 190. Yeah, and I was like, "Well, here we go. Time to get out the weed whacker." Just I took a lightsaber to it and just like, "Whoa, that's." And then I was like, "Huh, it's a little better.
Yeah,
I think it's a little better now."
amazing how that works. We think we need all the words, but actually, there's so much you can say in so fewer words.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are ways to do it. This is true.
Oh, it's the hardest lesson that I have to teach writers. It's like, yes, you can say it like that, but also if you don't and you write it this way, that takes off like that's like two fewer lines. See how
Yeah,
that works?
yeah. There it is. There it is. This is not the 18th century anymore. We don't have to have paragraphs that go on for 2.5 pages.
Oh,
Although I will say there is a time and a place for 2.5 page paragraph
oh yeah.
or
Oh,
longer.
for sure.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah.
I have one more question for you, and because you've listened to the show, you may know what I'm going to ask you, or maybe not. We'll see. Um, Here's one more thing I want to know. When you hear the word Star Wars, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Oh, it's so tough because I have been listening to the show and I was like, what is it? And then it was like I became like hyper aware. And then I was like, oh no, I don't know how to answer this question now because I'm hyper aware of the question. And it's like in some ways having the time to think about it has been a real curse for me. Um so and I'm just being honest. So it's really funny. But I think the first thing that comes to mind, um, I mean, I think I think it's family.
Mm,
Um, I think it's not really an image. It might be it might be the logo up on the screen with that fanfare because I used to work in a cinema when I was young. The first movie I worked for was the special edition of Empire Strikes Back at the Merle Hay Mall Cinema in Des Moines, Iowa, which is long since closed. And a huge theater, 800 seat theater, massive screen. We got Dolby Digital EX sound, especially when The Phantom Menace came out, just to upgrade the sound even more. And it was just a wonderful movie house. So there is that, but I mean, even that makes me feel family. I don't
mm.
know.
Yeah.
It's more this feeling in my biome
Mm,
in what I am.
yeah.
Family and amplifying that, my own family, the family on screen,
Mm,
the and the different ways that is inflected in the stories, um that's what it comes back to for me
mm.
is family.
See, that was a good answer. You got there.
That's what I was thinking. I was driving um several nights ago uh and I had this impromptu trip. I had to get up, I had to drive to the next town up, and I was thinking about it, and that was what sort of came to me.
Mm.
So, and yeah, and it's every time I thought, I'm like, oh, she's gonna ask a question. That question is gonna come at the end. I gotta have something. But every time that it's been that sense of like Star Wars is family.
Yeah.
So, and I would say a myth of the family. So,
Yes.
and hopefully that comes out in my book, Jung and Star Wars.
Yes. Oh, it's a good book.
Thank you.
It really is. And like I say that a lot. But that's because I don't just love reading. I love what reading can do for people. Um, and I don't have a psychology background. I studied English, so like what do I know? But at the same time, like
Same. I should say that I'm not a Jungian analyst. I'm
yeah.
a literary scholar, so I'm along with you for this ride.
But
Exactly.
I learned so much though. And that tells me that like no matter who you are, whether you have that background and know a little bit more, or you're like me and learned along the way, and also it's like through Star Wars. So like that's kind of like it's a fun way to learn. Whether you have that background or not, like there's a lot that you can get out of this book, and it's a lot of like taking what a lot of things that we are familiar to us from Star Wars, and you kind of shape it in a way that's like, oh, what if you think about it like this? And kind of like it sometimes has the power to change your perspective a little bit. And oh yeah, I've seen this scene a million times in Empire Strikes Back, but also now maybe I'll think about it a little bit more like this because of some things that you might have said. And
Wow.
that's good.
Thank you for that so much. That's
Yeah.
really heartening to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, and when you started or when you mentioned that you'd been listening a little bit to the show, I was like, I'm gonna ask that question at the end just to mess with him because I know he's gonna have heard it enough times. It unfortunately will get to a point where too many people are listening and the question won't be fun anymore because too many people will know I'm gonna ask it. But
No,
until
it's
then,
good. It's
until
good.
then.
I maintain, even if you know the question, it's a great question because that process, I mean, it sparked in me some real serious reflection. So,
Mhm.
so even though I knew it was coming, and even though I was like, oh no, that's okay. I can sit with that. And it's good that I did.
Yeah, there you go. Oh, I like that. That was good to hear. Um, Thank you so, so much, both for being patient with me while I figured out my technology, to, um, sitting here talking with me, talking about your book, but also about Star Wars, what it means to you, what it means to all of us. These are all really great things that we got to sit here and talk about, and I'm so glad that we did.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you for providing this forum for the Star Wars readers out there. And there are so many of us. Thank you.
Yeah, there are. Um, and all are welcome. And I promised you at the end, I was going to show you my bookshelves.
Oh, yeah.
Um, Come on. Is it gonna work? All right, here we
Oh, it worked.
go.
Oh my gosh. That's an amazing library. See, you've got a whole
Love it.
library.
I do.
This is wonderful. This is a little bit of my library, but I
Oh,
have
I love it.
some toys sticking out in front of the books, of course.
Now This Is Lit is part of the Faraway Fandom Network. It is produced by Devor Mondum and written, hosted, and edited by me. Jose Jimenez designed our podcast art. You can keep up with the show on Substack at Now This Is Lit, and find the show wherever you get your podcasts. There are so many ways you can support the show, and all of those ways are linked in the show description. The newest way is to become a member of our Patreon. For $1 a month, you can get access to an exclusive show and a sticker. And if we get 500 people to support the Patreon per month, I can hire an editor. That would be great for me, and maybe for you too. So if you'd like to support the show with just $1 a month, you can do it that way. Or you can just keep listening and sharing the episodes. That is also helpful, and I appreciate it. For more book reviews and Star Wars Book Celebration, follow Star Wars Book Reviews on Instagram and TikTok.